Malembe, Boreda, good morning. For those of us joining us virtually, good afternoon or good evening. It's a pleasure to welcome you here today to this session titled Wales and Uganda Collective Communities Action, organised by Jenipher's Coffi. For decades, people in Wales and Uganda have been exchanging ideas, sharing learning, and working hand in hand to tackle some of the biggest challenges both the region and the world face. Born from this friendship, Jenipher's Coffi is a new brand of coffee that, by doing business differently, unites communities to take collective action against climate change. You'll shortly hear from Jenipher and Ellen, who are seated here, the two women behind Jenipher's Coffi, and they'll share their stories and the story of Jenipher's Coffi. They'll then be joined by Albert Tucker, chairman of Etico, the ethical trading company, and the social business network, for a discussion exploring how government, businesses and communities can, through novel and innovative approaches, work together to deliver on the climate agenda. But first, we're delighted to have some opening remarks from the Welsh Government's Deputy Minister for Climate Change, Lee Waters. Unfortunately, he's unable to join us in person today, but we'll first hear his video message.
Well, I'm really sorry I can't be with you in person, but I'm really pleased to open this event virtually. I had the great pleasure of meeting Jenipher earlier this week, and for those of you who have not yet met her, you're about to. She certainly leaves a lasting impression, and it was appropriate. It was Gender Day here at COP26 that Jenipher told us about her story of being a leader, of being a farmer, and of being a fighter. You're about to see, I think, a really inspirational video seeing Jenipher in her setting, where she has mobilised farmers, not an easy thing to do in any society, to bring about change. And we're committed to working with Jenipher and the farmers on Mt Elgon to bring about practical action to tackle climate change in their community, dealing with the emissions we generate, but also creating opportunity for progress and for improving their way of life. So you have a pledge from us, Jenipher, that we are your partners in this and we'll work together closely in the future.
Diolch yn fawr. Thank you to Lee Waters for those kind words. I'll now pass over to Ellen.
Diolch Fion, bore da, good morning. Malembe. I met Jenipher in 2010 on a visit to Uganda, and I'll never forget the first time I saw that smile. I remember asking her what the people of Wales could do to support her and her fellow farmers. And she said, Ellen, it's simple. Buy my fair trade coffee. So in the following years, Jenipher's visited Wales. She's brought her coffee with her, roasted and sold on tabletops in community halls and cafes across Wales. And it sold out every time. There was demand, there was a market. The people of Wales were enthralled by her story. They were moved by the stories that she was sharing of how floods and landslides were tearing through their land. But they were also inspired about how Jenipher was stepping up to lead her community with hope and compassion. They wanted to become her customers, to buy her coffee and support her and her fellow farmers to adapt to climate change. The tail end of 2019, a few of us who'd met Jenipher over the years were keen to do more. John Harrington, Fionn Storer-Jones, and Jan Tucker at the infamous Fair Dues in Cardiff. We set up an informal group known as the Climate Change Coffee Project. We worked out if we could actually do what Jenipher had asked us all those years ago. But we couldn't do it without the support of Welsh Government. And John Townley, who's here today, the lead civil servant there, has been encouraging us to work together to bring this about. So why were we doing this? Well, we realised that the farmers may sell only 50% of their crop on fair trade terms, but they grow 100% of it to fair trade standards. So they are burdening the cost and they're not getting that added benefit. So that means at the end of the season, the farmers are getting $1.36 in the local market for any year-end surplus. And the fair trade premium, so the minimum price is set at $3.08, with that 20 cents premium on top. And then they get an extra 30 cents if it's organic. So fair trade will bring 2.5 times the value they'll get on that local market. So we were determined to do that because that is the difference between life and death. By March 2020, with the grant from the Welsh Government, the Wales in Africa programme that I mentioned, we secured a contract of 7,000 kilos of washed green Arabica coffee from Mt Elgon Agroforestry Community Cooperative Enterprise, MEAC. Supported by the Ethical Trading Company, who've been the best trading partner you could have asked for. We were able to pay the farmers 300% more than they would have received for their coffee on that local market. Then the pandemic hit us all. Lockdown measures halted the gathering of the coffee from the mountain slopes. It was a tough time for us all. After that delay, the coffee finally arrived on Welsh shores in November last year. The samples that we'd received earlier in the summer gained a score of 84, and any of you who are coffee aficionados, that's right there. It's an A-grade speciality coffee. But while we had the coffee ready to roast, people weren't drinking coffee the way that they were when we'd secured that initial contract. With people now drinking coffee at home rather than in their offices or in cafes and restaurants, we had to adapt quickly and find a way to get the coffee to drinkers in their homes. And with that, Jenipher's Coffee was born. And when we asked Jenipher how she'd feel if we could put her face on that brand, she was delighted. Farmer front and centre of the label. We knew the brand would always be bilingual, reflecting the deep connections between Wales and Uganda. Values of fairness, of people and planet stretch across our brand. So there was no doubt that our packaging would also be as sustainable as we could make it. Jenipher's Coffee became a social enterprise 2 months ago. We're very, very new. And supporting farmers to tackle the climate crisis is one of our guiding principles. And we put climate crisis on our packet. We're not for profit. We want to be able to buy more coffee in spring next year because we recognise that the more coffee that farmers sell on fair trade terms, the better they are able to respond to climate change. We're also keen to be net zero. We're working with our roasters for Ara's Coffee, Wales's longest established roaster since 1927, to decarbonise our roasting processes through solar power both in Wales and in Uganda. We call on anyone out there who can also help us make our next shipment via wind ship. We want to cut our carbon emissions by 50%, and that will help us do so. We're grateful to everyone who has supported us so far, and especially the communities in Casnewydd, Dolanog, Newtown, Anglesey and Swansea, all rural communities in Wales and socio-economic challenged areas, who are part of a community model where they buy direct and distribute to their communities. Any profit they make either goes back to MEAC to tackle climate change or recover from the impact of the COVID pandemic, or local food banks in Wales. 95 million cups of coffee are drunk in the UK alone every day. And despite all of us enjoying coffee on a daily basis, we're often unaware of how coffee's grown, or how hard the farmers grow and work to grow it, and the challenges that they face. And we're keen to do something about that. We're trying to do the best that we can, to do business the right way, with the right interventions, the support and the investments. It can be done. We're delighted to be here at COP26 to show that there is a better way to do business, to ensure that farmers' voices are heard. And with that, I'll hand over to Jenipher.
Thank you. Mlembe. Mlembe is greetings in my language, meaning peace. May you allow me go through my story, please? I'm Jenipher Sambazi. I'm a fair trade coffee farmer in Uganda. I've been growing coffee over 30 years. My grandparents grew coffee. My parents grew coffee. Even my children are growing coffee because I'm a coffee farmer. Coffee is in my blood. I'm part of a cooperative of 300 farmers in Vunavude, which is 2,400 meters above sea level on the slopes of Mt Elgon. I'm the chairperson, the first woman to hold this position, and this makes me very happy. We sell our coffee to a secondary cooperative where there are more than 3,500 farmers. It is called Mt Elgon Agroforestry Communities Cooperative Enterprise Limited, where I'm the vice chairperson. Again, I'm the first woman to be elected into this role. Things are changing. Me and my fellow farmers used to be able to farm consistently, following traditions passed down the generations. Me and my fellow, the seasons, the weather, nature were predictable. We relied on this certainty for food and our livelihoods. Then we noticed changes. We first noticed changes 20 years ago. We tried telling people, but no one would listen. It started with small changes, like the difference in the seasons. By a week or two, then birds were arriving at different times. Then came the rains, faster, quicker, without warning, and causing great harm to our coffee, to our land, to our people. When we joined fair trade, it felt that we were being listened to at last. Fair trade understood what farmers around the world were telling them. The environmental standards were strict in relationship to fertilizers, water usage, and pesticides. We were encouraged to grow organically and to participate in agroforestry methods. Fair trade has empowered me in more ways than I could ever have imagined. I'm happy to say that because of fair trade, I have not only benefited personally, but I'm also able to empower other women to learn. I empower other women to learn how to plant trees, to learn about climate change, and to learn about the power of fair trade. But despite the support and understanding by fair trade, climate change was gathering pace, and we were still on the forefront line. The ongoing floods were causing landslides and devastating nature. We were using trees more and more, going into the forest to collect trees for firewood and losing our soils. We were in a crisis. 10 years ago, we started working with the Welsh government and other partners, and they recognized the issues and started funding tree planting programs. Trees are for food, for canopy, for shelter. You will often find me sheltering under a tree from the hot midday sun after a busy morning working on my land. Trees and their roots restore and protect soil. They protect us against deadly landslides. Some leaves provide fodder and return to nature when they fall into the soil. They help to nurture our coffee, protecting it from extreme weather. Had we not had the protection from the trees when the hailstones landed last year, we would have lost all our coffee crop, but the trees saved us. Another impact of climate change that we are witnessing is the increase in pests. We have seen an increase in locusts, which can devastate our crops. We have seen an increase in coffee berry borer, which affects the berries. There is also coffee leaf rust, which affects the leaves. It is really hitting us hard. But there is some good news. For those trees that are healthy, the quality of our coffee has increased since the trees have been planted, and we get a better price for our coffee. This is good for the farmers and our cooperatives. When we get more money for our hard work, we are better prepared to respond to climate change. In 2019, the Fair Trade certifications were amended to include anti-deforestation measures. So you can be sure that when you buy Fair Trade, you are not contributing to deforestation. So if you are asking yourself today, what can I do to help against deforestation and climate change? The answer is buy only Fair Trade. Climate change is causing increasing environmental and social issues. The research suggests that there is a link between climate change and the increase in pandemics. COVID-19 has had a devastating effect on our communities. The lockdowns have been hard, lives have been lost, livelihoods lost. Children are not going to school, their futures are at risk. During the pandemic, we were able to work in partnership with the people of Wales who bought our coffee through a new social enterprise. It's called Jenipher's Coffee. If you love coffee like me and you want to ensure that you don't cause deforestation, then I urge you to buy Jenipher's Coffee. According to the Global Forest Watch project, which uses satellite imagery to gather deforestation data, a shocking 15 billion trees are cut down every year. This is Coxside. Trees are our friends. They are our guardians. They provide, they protect, they keep us safe from climate change. But we must guard them too. We must conserve them, protect them as they protect us, and plant more trees. We must not wait for the future. We must do it now, together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, Jenipher. Wanyala. Before we press play on the short film that we have, I just wanted to encourage you all to submit questions that we can ask to the panelists during the discussion that we'll have shortly. If you log into slido.com with a browser and enter this code or scan the QR code, we'd really love to have your questions. And with that, we'll go to the film.
It's from this soil that I make my living, feed my family, educate my children. Yet it's slipping away from us. I've been growing coffee on this mountain for almost 30 years. And today I lead a cooperative of over 3,000 farmers scattered across its slopes. I'm Jenipher Sambazi, farmer, leader, fighter. What are we fighting against? Climate change. Coffee production across the world is under threat as changing weather patterns cause damage and disease. Around 10 years ago, with the help of the people of Wales and its government, we started planting different trees among our coffee plants using a method that's known today as agroforestry. As farmers, we play a part in our community's efforts to restore our soils and protect our lives and livelihoods from the changing weather that causes ferocious mudslides to tear through our land more and more often. People lose their homes, their livelihoods, and loved ones. Coffee is precious to us. It sustains us. A sensitive plant, these trees provide protection, shading the coffee from hailstones and too much sunshine. Enriching the soil, the trees help to improve the quantity and quality of the specialty coffee we produce by hand. As a fair trade cooperative, we are paid fairly to grow our coffee organically alongside these magnificent trees to meet standards that consider what's best for people and the planet. By working together to reforest this land, we are securing a brighter future for the next generation, locally and globally. We fight for them, but we cannot do this alone.
Albert, thanks for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed hearing from Ellen and Jenipher, and also seeing from Jenipher in Uganda as well. I'll get to Slido and look at the questions shortly, but I think just to kick it off, it would be great, Jenipher, to hear a little bit more about your day-to-day life as a coffee farmer, and what is it that you like about being a coffee farmer?
Okay, thank you, Fionn. My day life, today's life, is that I have much morale and I feel better when every morning I wake up, go to my coffee farm, monitor, work there, and supervise whenever there are some pests, there are some unwanted crops which are growing, I remove them, and I'm happy to be a coffee farmer.
Great. Thank you. And I think it would be great to go on to the next question, actually, that's come in from Beth. Thank you. Asking, how can we best support you and your co-farmers in battling climate change?
Yeah. The way you can support me and my farmers about climate change is that, as you have already heard, we have to buy fair trade coffee and Jenipher's coffee. And I request that if the price, as Ellen said, talked of cents and pounds, if they can be lifted up for the farmer, then they get that money. It would be good for them to fight climate change, as it's really hitting us very hard.
I think that important point that you made during your speech, talking about fair trade and deforestation, and how fair trade is supporting you to tackle deforestation. Albert, do you think there is enough understanding maybe that fair trade is working on these issues and is helping farmers to tackle these challenges?
Yes, fair trade is helping. Though it's in the process, in the line of helping farmers, we still need more help, because some farmers are still very behind. I'm from a hard-to-reach area, and reaching those farmers, it takes hard time to go there. So sometimes we have women groups visiting there to inform them about the change in climate change, how it's affecting us. So it needs some more help to reach them.
And I would say fair trade is one thing. We must remember what fair trade was set up to do. It was set up to change the way trade is done for the better. That's what it was set up to do. And fair trade farmers are remarkable people. Jenipher is an amazing woman. If you get the chance to talk to her personally about her journey. She's inspirational. She's educated herself. But she talks very strongly. Remember, it's Jenipher's Coffi, but she works with 3,000 other farmers. They're developing their communities. They're training the next generation. They're at the forefront of fighting climate change, but also poverty. You know, let's be clear. And with Etico, in our business model, is to work with farmer cooperatives, cooperation. I think all of here you see signs saying we work together, and we're part of that. Jenipher asked to buy Jenipher Coffi. Please do, and demand it. But I would say more than buying it, demand it. Demand fair trade products in whichever products you're buying. That's the only way we'll change, if people feel they have to work with farmers like Jenipher and her communities, because they're the ones at the forefront, at the front line, and we've got to get resources into their hands to deal with this. And by the way, that's not just for farmers in Africa and Latin America and Asia, it's also farmers here. They are our early warning systems, and they've been warning us for 30 years. And so really, we need to work very, very tightly and make sure farmers are successful. Through fair trade, we saw fair trade and the way people like the organic systems and all of that as a way of demonstrating that this another way is possible. It doesn't have to be the way we're doing trade. And it's great to have farmers like these in the system who are showing that they can work together, they can produce, they can educate, and they can lead. And so I think when I talk about fair trade, when we in Etico talk about fair trade, we talk about collaboration, we talk about cooperation, we talk about change, serious change. And I think that's why a product like Jenipher's Coffi is at the front line. Everybody can do coffee like that. And there was a key statistic that I think Ellen said, which is the vast majority of the coffee from that cooperative is not sold on fair trade terms. But it could be. So who's buying that coffee? It's the other coffees you're buying. So we need to demand of our where we buy and sell that, no, it has to be like this, because people need that resource. It costs us to destroy the environment. So we need that resource going in there. And I think that's what fair trade is about. That's what Jenipher's Coffi is about. That's what we at Etico are about. And that's why we collaborate with like-minded people. And I think we need to get that message out more and more.
As Ellen has demonstrated, and as you've elaborated on now, that there is a way of doing this differently. And there's a question from Bethany, and maybe I'll direct it to you, Ellen, that you are doing things differently. And she's asking, how does your social enterprise share best practice with other coffee farmers globally? And does Fairtrade or the Welsh Government help with this?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, the whole point of what we were trying to do is to bring the supply chain as small and as tight as you could possibly get. So there is no room for corruption or middlemen. Jenipher tells a story about what life used to be like before fair trade, where the middlemen just used to rip them off. And that's what drives me. And I'm keen to share that with any coffee industry. We've already been talking to some people, small scale micro lots that are coming from around the world here. Well, we've been in COP, but yeah, Nestle, Kenco, if you're listening, come and talk. We're happy to share what we're doing because we care about Jenipher and all her fellow farmers. It's really important that if you can't have trade justice, you can't have climate justice without caring and without making sure that you're not causing harm. And, I'm hoping Jenipher will hold me to account, will check up on me. What are you doing with every element of the way that you're bringing your coffee through to Wales, the UK and beyond? And happy to work with Welsh Government to export this model, to export Jenipher's Coffi around the world. It's brilliant coffee, but I think it's the best way that you can possibly do it.
And I think following up on that, there's a question here from David, thank you, who's asking about, is there a potential for other areas of the UK or other global north countries to form partnerships with places on the climate front line? Ellen, do you see Wales as a best practice on this? Do you think that Wales as a small nation, and I think I'm correct in saying that it's Small Nation Day here today, has the opportunity here to showcase how, you know, not only businesses but governments, nations, communities can be part of this approach to doing things differently?
You know, absolutely. If we were able to partner, you know, with Welsh Government and with other nations to talk about what we did, how we did it, we're already partnered with GEPA, a fair trade organisation in Germany who helped. We shared some containers. So there is room for us to be talking to perhaps the bigger players. I don't know whether the US, with their change in the fair trade labelling system, and whether China are ready to come and talk about fair trade yet. But, you know, I'm here to start that conversation rolling. If anybody's prepared, you can just contact me at Jenipher's Coffi.
Can I say on that? I'm very parochial about this one. I'll be parochial for a minute, having talked about collaborating more. I think I talked earlier about we need to make systemic change. We need to do business differently. And I think a lot of the times when you've seen the existing big players who are doing well out of the system come in, they try to subvert it back to what we know. I'd rather see a lot more Jenipher's Coffi around the place and more growth of the businesses who genuinely embed the principles we're talking about as a way of showing the competitors that they have to shift their ways. So rather than just giving them our gold, I would rather we push them to change the way they do business by competing with them, by you as consumers saying, no, we don't want to do that because it's not enough. We want to do this because it's better. And then for us, businesses like that, to collaborate more and take more of the market from the behemoths who can turn around, those tankers that can change their ways, should lose business. That's the quickest way to get change. So I think, yes, let's share knowledge, skills, and so on. But let's also make the businesses that are doing it successful, very successful. And that's the quickest way to make business pay attention.
I've been buying fair trade for over 40 years, and I really would like to say something about it.
I think we might have a mic. For those that didn't hear, we have someone in the front here that wants to ask a question.
Well, it's really not a question, it's a statement. When you buy from people like Jenipher, when I buy from Chris up the road who has chickens and I buy her eggs, your money is going directly to the people who make it. And that means two things. First of all, you're getting better value for your money. I get lovely fresh eggs from Chris up the road. I buy local meat. I buy local wherever I can. And when I can't buy local, I buy fair trade. We don't grow coffee in Wales. Duh. we love coffee. So let's buy from the people who make it. And Jenipher, about your trees. I was 80 on the 4th of July and couldn't have a big party for my birthday. And Jonas in Malawi said, Grandma, we'll plant trees for your birthday. They're planting trees there. I thought, beautiful. So I started sharing this around the world. Moses in Uganda, I must introduce you to Moses. He started a microfinance thing that might be able to help. But Moses is creating an e-book of these trees that are coming from all over the world, from Finland to Peru, from Canada to Australia, and we're going to send this e-book to all governments and say, these are your voters. They want you to get your finger out. So my question to all of you, Jenipher's already doing it, and I need a photograph of the trees you've planted amongst the coffee. Plant trees, send me your photographs, send me your comments, and that will go in the e-book, and will make a difference. Oh, and I'm also going to send it to the Queen, so that we can add your trees to the Queen's canopy. Prince of Wales has got a house in my village, so I've got a bit of an in. And finally on Facebook, if you look for Learn with Grandma. and I'm speaking tomorrow in the North Tower.
There's an important point in that which I want to pull out. I mean, there's a number of important points in that. But why, with us in ETCO, we work largely with co-ops. I talked about the importance of working with farmers collectively, but also why co-ops. This country was built by the poor communities on cooperatives, because cooperation is how poor people build up capital. But the other thing we find with working with co-ops is the very point you just made, which is that when co-ops earn money and make money in communities, it's invested in their communities. When the large traders and companies make profit, it goes into the global market. It goes into global investments. So if we're looking at developing communities, and a large part of the environmental rescue that we need is also to make sure people are not just on survival mode, that people can develop and communities can progress. So cooperatives are a really good starting point. I think a Peruvian colleague once said to me, cooperatives are poor people's working capital, are poor communities' working capital. And I think that's why we work with cooperatives. That's why it's quite important that fair trade prioritize cooperatives of smallholders. Because if you have 2 or 3 hectares of coffee, it's very difficult for you to make money. But if there's 1,000 of you, 500 of you, with 2 or 3 hectares of coffee, you can do well. So that's why it's very important to us, cooperation, working with farmers, and actually working with communities. It's a very, very important point.
I think it highlights, doesn't it, that we all have a vote with every pound that we spend, and individually we can make a change, but by coming together we can really push forward and deliver action. And I think, Jenipher, we've got lots of questions coming in for you. One is about, from Bethany, thank you, one is about your role as the first female chairperson, how the community responds to your leadership, your female leadership, and how do you feel about being a leader? Great question.
Okay, thank you, Fionn. My community feels proud being a simple leader. To change the community is not impossible. So they are proud of me. And they are also proud of their other women, because some time back, you couldn't find a woman going for meetings. Her work was to stay in the kitchen, cooking, digging, caring for the children, caring for the man. But now, as fair trade empowered me, I also empowered them. I empowered even their men. Women have come on board to go for meetings. They are participating in leadership, in decision making. They are working together with their men, and ownership of assets, they are doing that through fair trade. They are really very happy with me.
Thanks, Jenipher. There is a question from Ellen in Newport. Diolch, Ellen, who's joining us virtually, I think, and is a supporter of Jenipher's Coffi. It's lovely to have you join us virtually. I think moving on from your answer in terms of leadership and your role in helping farmers and the community tackle the challenges that you're facing, Ellen is interested in hearing what are the biggest challenges that you face day to day growing your coffee in Mt Elgon, on Mt Elgon.
Our biggest challenges in growing coffee on Mt Elgon is sometimes we experience a long drought, which causes harm to our coffee trees. If there is long drought, long sunshine period, it affects our coffee beans. They come into defects, which they are not of good quality, yet we produce quality coffee to satisfy the specialty market. Even another challenge is landslides. We are ever experiencing landslides which are losing people's lives, people's animals, shelter, and everything which farmers have if they are in that area. When landslide has occurred, they lose everything. We also experience hailstones if we have heavy storms, they hit our coffee trees so that, again, they become into defects. But I'm happy we shall overcome those challenges like direct sunshine, like hailstones, like washing away of topsoil, because we are planting these trees to hold our soils.
Can I just come into that? I think this is why, you know, we're trying to disrupt trade. When you hear stories like that, it just breaks my heart. I know it, I've seen it, I hear it. We talk all the time about what life is like and what we can do, and I need your help to disrupt. When you hear of Jenipher and her fellow farmers that are burdening the effects of climate change and trade justice, and the big coffee companies just don't care. They're looking at your 10%ers, the greenwashing, if we actually cared about the planet and cared about people, then we wouldn't be squashing the price down all the time. It's something I see right across when I'm now in the coffee world, where everything comes down to price. And I need your help to disrupt so that we can ensure that that front line is as safe and as joyous as possible. And what can we do
on
about
the
that?
reforestation thing, can I make a plea? I mean, they're talking about 100 billion and so on. What we're seeing with the mitigation efforts is going into governments and international NGOs and things like that. The frontline defense, it gets very little in what Jenipher is saying. And we need to make sure that cost is transferred down to the people who get their hands dirty planting the damn trees, who actually have got the knowledge to still have those forests and woods, which we've destroyed here, natural woods and forests. And we need to make sure those resources go there as part of the reparations, if you like, or part of the cost of doing business the right way. And I've been privileged enough in my working life to travel to many coffee growing areas. And always, if you've ever had a chance to go to Mt Elgon, it's a beautiful place. You saw the farm she was at. I mean, there's the challenges we face and the crisis that we're facing, but actually you go to Mt Elgon, you're at peace when you get there, because those communities have preserved that place to be environmentally friendly. You go to Machu Picchu where coffee grows, you go to Kilimanjaro where coffee grows. Those communities have preserved those by doing their business within that environment. And we need to reward that. And we need to support that, and we need to demand that. And we need to also do that for farmers in the UK as well, by the way. But we need to really make sure those communities, those farmers that are doing the work actually are being paid, compensated, incentivized to continue doing it in that way. And that's why buying from Fairtrade, buying from these cooperatives, I like different kinds of coffee, so I might well have Jenipher's in the evening, and I might have Kilimanjaro in the morning. And I think that's fine, but make sure it's coming from a place where it's the communities who are doing this work that we all want done, who are doing it and getting the incentives to actually do it. And they're capable, they know, they've kept their forests going, they've kept trees going in their environment. We just need more from them, and we need to start doing more of it here as well. So I think the way we participate in trade, the way we participate in food, we need to make it work for the planet as well, not just our activism.
A question has just come in, actually, and I think it would be quite interesting to jump straight to it. We've talked about the true cost of food and the role of certification in allowing us to buy with principles and to support farmers socially and in their mission to protect the environment as well. This question is coming about fair trade certification and the criticism of child labour and deforestation within the system. How can people choosing fair trade be sure that buying fair trade will support farmers like Jenipher?
Thank you, Fion. We have the Fair Trade Foundation, And for someone to know that this money goes direct to the farmer and helping communities is that we are having annual audits every year. We have auditors from Fair Trade Foundation to come and audit the cooperative to see whether the money which were given to farmers did the correct activity, did it go to the correct project, or it was just mishandled. And if they find that a COP has non-compliance, it's not working by the standards of fair trade, the certificate is cancelled. So for us in Miaka, I'm happy to report to you that every year auditors come, they audit us and find that what we are doing is in line with the standards of fair trade.
And forgive me, I've worked in fair trade for a lot of my working life. Uganda, so fair trade is a moving feast. It's a continual trying to change the game. When we first went to work in Uganda with Ugandan farmer cooperatives, Uganda was at risk of being excluded from the world market because of the way trade is done. Fair trade went in and worked with a small group of farmers and got to demonstrate that in Uganda you could do this. That demonstration meant organizations like MIA could come forward. And fair trade goes on. There are more challenges for fair trade. When I first started working in fair trade, most farmers didn't know what the price of coffee was. They were only what they were told at the farm gate. But fair traders will come in and talk to farmers. Some of us will help train farmers, and farmers train us about what the coffee was about, what would be the best coffee, why shade trees. It produces really good coffee if it's in shade. If it's not, it doesn't. And so it makes it easy to do sustainable coffee, to promote coffee. If you think in the UK we were not drinking a roast and ground coffee so much 15, 20 years ago, but actually fair trade was at the forefront of saying, actually you can do this the right way and still have good coffee. And so fair trade, we need to push fair trade as well to continue being consistently supportive to farmers to do the right thing. And I think you'll be very surprised the number of farmer producer organizations who often get put on measures to correct things that are not quite right. So you can have the confidence in that, it's doing. That's not to say things don't go wrong. Things do. That's the nature of trade, business, and production. Farmers are... We work in cocoa in Sierra Leone, and Jenipher talked about mudslides in East Africa. We've seen more mudslides across Africa than I've ever seen in my lifetime. In Sierra Leone, cocoa farmers are telling me for the first time, cocoa was coming into crop about 3 months before it ever did before. So we're seeing the environment changing, and we've got to restore it. Otherwise, our food is at stake, let alone coffee. You know?
The other thing I find too is that if you buy fair trade and if you buy local, you're getting better value for your money. You know, it is. Some people think it's more expensive to buy fair trade, but actually, because it's better quality, you're getting better value. I mean, don't buy New Zealand lamb when you can buy good Welsh lamb. Our lambs feed on the grass and field across the road from me.
I think it's a really important point that you're making, that we have become quite distant from where our food is being produced and how it's being produced. I'm speaking as a farmer's daughter. I've grown up in producing food, and I buy a lot of food, and that's a really important thing, isn't it? That bringing those people together, and that's very central to Jenipher's Coffee's mission, to bring coffee producers and coffee drinkers much closer together, so that gap can be bridged and that they can converse and see the true value of paying fairly and paying the true cost of that food. We've got so many great questions coming in, and I'm not sure how good of a job I'm doing at getting them all answered with the time that we have. I think, you know, we spoke in the bio of this event, and I earlier talked about kind of action. And I am maybe reflecting the opinion of many of my generation, asking for less blah, 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 and more let's, you know, do. And I think, you know, it's really important that we touch upon that. You know, the summit is drawing to an end. You know, what do we want to see happen? What needs to happen? And I think, Jenipher, if I could come to you first, you know, what do you want to see coming out of this summit, and what do you think COP26 can do for coffee farmers and for farmers generally? Big question.
Okay, thank you. Since the 26th COP started, I think this is now the second week, and I know that everyone who is here has a vision and target and some other issues of how it should be done. But me, I think that if this 100 billion pounds given to the governments, they should go direct to the correct people who can utilize that money to fight climate change. I say so because sometimes, for example, in my country, we have programs, we have Operation Wealth Creation, we have NADS. But if that money is being given to the administrators to take down to farmers to utilize it in their farms, that money is just mishandled. A farmer can't see the money. Then the time comes, you see someone coming to you, hey, Jenipher, you were given a car. Where's your car? You were given seedlings, coffee. Then you say, from where? They just write air. So if this money goes direct to the communities, direct to the small producer organizations, direct to the good hands, to those who feel sorry for climate change, to those who have the heart to fight for climate change, it would be better. I think my papa here can also add something on that.
Well, I think I've said about what should be done, but what I'm struck by COP that I was hoping would happen, I haven't seen as much of, is the policy framework. This is systemic. It's not just planting trees that will do this. We need to change the way we do trade, the systems of trade, and I'd like to see us holding our policymakers, politicians to account. So things like the buying local stuff, I mean, how is that being enabled in the policy economic environment we got by our taxation systems? How is it that that local farmer you're talking about has to pay their taxes, but some of the biggest people competing with them don't? And so those are the kind of things as well we have to pressure for, and the way we buy things as well, and what we ourselves do. I mean, we all love our little luxuries and little, I'm sure we all have our shopping closets that we all hide into sometimes, but we need to make sure that those who are providing that also act and do business in the way we've seen examples of that can make things better, not worse. And so I think it's quite important to hold these policymakers to account when we leave here, to hold this, to actually make sure our actions in the market, in the shops, in the streets we go to, tell people this is not what we want. And I've been very heartened by the young people I'm hearing. Well, they're not saying, oh, we've got this global strategy for doing this. They're saying this has to stop. There's no question about it. How you do it, stop it. And I think we need to have that attitude, and we need to demand that of our policymakers who are coming out of COP now. They don't come here, feel good as they did with Paris, and go away again, and we're still trying to find a way in. And I think we need to go with the young people's agenda, which is, it's not good enough, stop it, do something else. And that's the strategy.
And Alan, you've spoken about there is no climate justice without trade justice. How do we get that change happening? Like, how do small businesses like Jenipher, how do we as individuals call for that change, for the values embedded in Jenipher's coffee to be embedded right across our trade systems?
I think for me it's about values. We've heard a lot about the 1.5 degrees. And if you look behind that of how we're going to be able to reach that, then you cannot cut down rainforests, you cannot keep people living in poverty. So if we get to that root cause, we're going to be able to do it. Now, I often question about how much electricity I use, how much consumption. And I think compared to Jenipher, where you probably just use a phone, when I look at all my appliances in my house, and that injustice. So about doing less, using less, but having one good coffee a day, but paying well for it. And calling on businesses that we don't want just lots and lots of things flooded. We want less, better. And if we look at those values and ask governments to look at what outcomes they want, what businesses actually want to feed down to us, rather than just masses in a capitalist world that is all about how much money we can make from every single purchase that you do, rather than how can we deliver a sustainable planet, how can we value our farmers and our workers and pay them properly so that we're preventing. I think we need government interventions. I'd love to see the legal system with the ecocide that we're seeing with deforestation come into the legal frameworks, where if you are not paying somebody enough for the work or for their product, then let's look at legal action, because you are causing, it's manslaughter, it's ecocide and manslaughter, and I'd love to see some legal action coming in and being brave enough. So yeah, come and talk to me.
Can I give a quick stat, which is, and I can't remember the exact figures, so forgive me, but if the temperature rises by 2 degrees, something like a quarter of the people who make their living off coffee at the moment won't be able to. Yeah. And that's how serious it is.
I'm really sad to say that our time is drawing to an end, but thank you so much to everyone who's joined us today and asked all of the questions. We haven't been able to get through as many as we would have liked to, but please come down, ask the questions directly afterwards. I can't not answer where you can buy Jenipher's coffee, of course. So it's available online, www.jenipherscoffee.wales, and if you'd prefer to ask your question online, there is a contact form on the website. Ellen will be more than happy to answer your questions there. Sorry that we haven't been able to go through them all, but I think in my closing, before I hand over to Molly Hucker, who is a Youth Cymru Climate Ambassador, to finish off and give closing remarks today, I think I'd repeat the words that our Minister said earlier this week. What good is it talking about net zero in 2050 when people like Jenipher are facing the challenges of climate change today? You know, what can we all do today? What can we do tomorrow, next year? And I think the message I'm getting is we need to get tough with our politicians, with ourselves too. There is behaviour change needed, but there is really a need for compassion and fairness in the way that we tackle this together. So with that, I'll hand over to Molly. Thank you.
Could you just repeat that first thing, please?
Yes, I'll give it to you in a second. We just need to finish on time. I'll come to you.
People might want it.
Hello everyone, so my name is Molly and I'm from the Youth Climate Ambassadors for Wales, a group of young people that seek to amplify the youth voice in Wales and really start discussions on the climate emergency. So I'd like to start by thanking our panel for the amazing conversation on what is currently happening and providing such a clear alternative to what we need to see in the future. So please join me in congratulating our panel for all the work they do. And I'd like to thank everyone in the audience as well, because it's being part of the discussion and everyone having a voice and a seat at the table that really does achieve change. And hopefully moving beyond today, what we need to see is talking in our communities and taking the message of the fair trade that we need to be seeing, the alternative that we have, back to our communities, telling our friends, our families and our colleagues as well. And I think what struck me most as well about the discussion today is the really unique partnership that Wales and Uganda has. At COP, we hear about nationally determined contributions. And while these have a part to play and countries should be ambitious on their own grounds, the climate emergency is a multifaceted problem and a transcendent problem and a global problem, so we need a global response. The climate emergency knows no boundaries, and Jenipher spoke about mudslides and droughts in Uganda. These problems aren't isolated to Uganda, and a mudslide in Uganda should be a problem in Wales too, because the fight against the climate emergency is a fight that we're all in together, so we need to be working together. And this really shows how climate justice and social justice go hand in hand. You can't have the one without the other, they come together. And I think Jenipher spoke so well about being, a leader in her community, and how women leaders transform communities, and how fair trade transforms communities. So let's make sure that we're supporting those women in communities, and the fair trade as well. So we all have a part to play, and we should buy fair trade when possible. And I think we need to give credit to Welsh Government as well for making fair trade more accessible in this example, because I come from a very deprived community, and sometimes these solutions may not be affordable or accessible or even convenient to people. So we need to see government showing leadership to make the fair trade option the most affordable, accessible and convenient, so that everyone can be part of the climate solution and the just transition. So I think we need to give credit where credit's due, but keep on pushing for that systemic change. And I really loved Ellen's message about disrupting trade and the system. So after this, I would like to invite you all to join me in disrupting the system that we see today and supporting Jenipher's Coffi. So thank you so much.